All right, so ski season's almost over, which means I've got a little bit more time to play in the shop. And just wanted to show off a little bit of work I've done on the CNC machine. And this is to switch out the mechanical switch for the Y-axis to a inductive probe. So this probe will detects metal, and so it will trigger when this side plate gets to the back. But I've also added a second one. So right now on the Super Longboard, which is the controller I'm using, natively it doesn't support autosquaring, but Chris at Sienci Labs has a specific firmware that includes the pre-release auto squaring feature. So now with two limit switches on the y-axis, I can use the auto squaring feature now that I have that firmware loaded on my controller. So I wanted to show that. Basically, I've just designed a 3D printed part to hold the sensor, and it allows me to go a little further back, get a little bit more cut capacity, just with the way that those sensors are set up. And essentially what that looks like on controller is these two wires, a little bit hard to see, but essentially those two white JST plugs are Y1 and Y2, and those correspond to the motors that they're tied to. So you want to make sure that your Y1 sensor goes to your Y1 motor and your Y2 sensor goes to your Y2 motor. Otherwise, it will definitely cause some problems if you're going to set up this firmware. So the reason you would want to have the auto squaring feature is, this has actually happened to me on two different occasions, once with this CNC machine and once with a different CNC machine, but with only one Y-axis switch. What can happen is if I was doing maintenance on the machine, the motors were off, and I moved the ball screws or pushed the gantry, what can happen is you can see on this side, there's no gap. So the calipers are tight against the front frame and the Y-axis, or I guess the Z gantry plate. But if I go over to the other side and I put the calipers in the same spot, now I've got the front plate and I've got about a maybe 4 or 5 millimeter gap there. So what's going to happen is that means that the gantry is now racked. It's tilted this way. And what's going to happen is if I was to home the machine, fire it up, that difference would still exist with just one limit switch. And the problem then is when I cut, I'm going to get rectangles instead of squares. I'm going to get ovals instead of circles. That's how it's going to manifest. So the cool thing with having the auto square firmware and two limit switches is when I home the machine. So I'm just going to in G sender here, I'm just going to home the machine now. So gantry is going to go up. So it's going to move back, and the Y gantry, or the X, I guess the X rail, is going to touch off both probes. And now when I jog the machine forward, get the machine close here. Okay, so now with the machine has run its homing cycle, and I check with the calipers again. So now we are nice and tight on this side. I'm just going to turn that thumb screw a little bit, and we'll go over here, and you can see now that gap is gone, and I am the same distance on both sides. So with those two limit switches and auto squaring firmware, I now, every time I home my machine, I know that my Y rails and my X rail is square, so that when I do a cut, I'm getting nice crisp squares or perfectly round circles rather than oddly shaped ones. So I'll make that printed part available. This is the printed part. It does require a couple M3 heat inserts, and then a M4 T-nut and an M4 bolt. And it is set up so that it will clear the trucks. They shouldn't really need it at the back. It should be set up so that it doesn't really need to clear it. But just in case there was an instance where you needed it to, I did make it so it would clear. And there is a bit of adjustment on the sensor itself, and I'll link the sensors that I specifically used. But I just wanted to show that off a bit and give a thanks to Chris at Sienci Labs for getting that firmware out. Hopefully it becomes part of the main firmware build shortly, but I thought that was cool. Thanks.